Hey guys, this is Varti from HOKI, and I'm going to walk you guys through the Walskin Talk, our latest single from our upcoming album today. So as you guys see, the track is in D minor, and we've decided to go with a slightly lower BPM on this track compared to our first album, which the tracks are a bit higher in BPM. So the BPM of this track is 109. It's a bit slower, it's a bit groovier, kind of lets the bass and the groove breathe a bit more, which is kind of cool. So let's start off. I'm just going to play this section for you guys first, and I'm going to go through each one of the instruments and show you what the sounds are comprised of.
Something stopping you from taking these. It's the only thing that sets you free. Another way to run. It's coming together. You've got something in your hand, I see. Behind this wall, these lies won't save me. It's coming together.
So we'll start off with the kick. For the kick, I've used Kick 2, which is a plugin from Sonic Academy. So it's a preset that I've built through a drummer's mic kick I had a while back, and I've changed it up to make it my own, and it's a kick that I've used in the first album as well. So you guys can see that the tail is not too long, just enough for the track to breathe and the sub not to be overloaded. We have one click going on right here. Could barely hear it, but it kind of makes a difference in terms of the top end of the kick that I want. Not much sub going on. The sine wave, the sub control is set to a sine wave for a nice smooth sub sound. I'm using a bit of distortion here. It's a clip distortion, and the drive is helping as well in terms of the sound. I'm not using any other top end kicks, I would say, simply because I just felt like there was good warmth in this sound that I found, so I'm kind of happy with it. So if I play it in solo so you hear what the kick sounds like. So it's nothing magical, but it fits in with the track real well. That's what's important in production, right? Sometimes sounds that you use don't sound great by themselves, or don't sound like the best in the world by themselves, but when you put it in a track, it just fits so well, right? So in terms of the bass, we have a top bass and a low bass. So I'll solo the top bass first. It's a signal patch from output. So it's a very rhythmic, kind of an ongoing type of driving sound. And in terms of the low is where most of the energy is in the bass. What's interesting here, it doesn't only contain a sub sound. The low bass also has a bit of mid-range and distorted high range and a bit of width. So I'm going to walk you guys through with that. Again, this is a plugin that I've used from Substance, from Output. It's called Substance. And it's an interesting sound because it has 3 different layers. So if I were to close these 3 layers right here, so we hear this is kind of the click, this is the body of the bass, and this is pretty much the chorusy, wider sounding top end of the sound, kind of spreads the mid-high range a bit more. What's interesting is when we look at the MIDI notes are not playing as often as we hear the rhythm playing. That's because I've decided to add a delay and an ARP to it in the effects section if we turn it off, and in the ARP section if we turn the ARP off. And this is what it sounds like, just the MIDI notes by themselves. So that's the bass sound in itself. In terms of top end drums, we kind of stay minimal with that. If I just zoom out on the track, there's only a clap coming in about 2 minutes in, and the drop section, it drops off, it comes back in, and that's it. We just felt like This clap was bouncing well with the track, so we just kept it as is. We didn't want to add anything else to add more noise to the track, right? If it works as is, why not just keep it? This is how the clap sounds like by itself. I believe it's a Vengeance sample that I've processed. So quite simple, very minimal sounding. In terms of the pads, I'm using 4 different Omnisphere patches that are all layered. Some of them are playing in the 2nd octave right here. I've just froze, it's blue because I froze on the tracks to make sure that I could do this recording without the computer bugging out. So we got the first layer that's in the 2nd octave. We got the 2nd and 3rd one that are both in the 3rd octave. They're complementing each other in terms of sound and layering. And you pretty much see going from an E, the 2nd pitch of the scale, to the D, the tonic. That's why the track is in D minor. The bass line is kind of doing the same as well. I've also decided to add another layer with this sound. This emphasizes pretty much of a specific voicing in the chord progression that I wanted to emphasize in the track. Same for the orchestrals. I'm using analog strings from output and Omnisphere as layers. I have the chords playing again with the string sound. It's a lower string, and I've emphasized a voicing on the Omnisphere to kind of like stick out a melody from that chord progression, which is this middle line that's moving right in the track. Moving on to the plucks. This is how the track starts, right? So the track contains the sound all across, which is kind of interesting. And there's a lot of automation and movement happening in the track that kind of adds a lot of flow along with the track. There's a reverb automation as well, the Valhalla reverb automation. So it starts very wet and dries up. And then as the track's moving forward, there are some volume automations happening. So it adds a lot to the track as well in terms of added rhythm, because we don't have the top drums happening. I'll just zoom back in. And in terms of the vocals dry, sound quite dry. I'm just going to remove the plugins that I have right now.
Something stopping you from taking these. It's the only thing that sets you free.
I use Nectar. In Nectar, I use basic compression, basic 2 compressors, an EQ, a bit of de-essing, a bit of saturation, a tad amount of reverb, followed by CLA, which again kind of boosts a bit of the treble, also a bit of compression, kind of have a chamber reverb happening with a 1/4 note delay, kind of adding to the sound. And I put the Renaissance Vox, which is a limiter from Waves meant for vocals. So all together, this is how it sounds like.
Something stopping you from taking these. It's the only thing that sets you free.
One thing that's super important to note, I don't have multiple layers. We don't do a lot of layers. We barely do comping. We barely do tuning on specific parts. And once that's done, that's the take. I want to keep the mix a bit intimate. Brent has a good voice. His execution is great. So why not highlight that? And layering vocals for me has always been a bit of a, just it doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, especially for this HOKI project, which again, I want it to be a bit more upfront, a bit more raw, a bit more stripped down. It's the aesthetics we're going for. That's why we have 1 layer happening in the vocals, and the processing too is quite minimal. One last thing I want to talk about quickly is the overall multiband, sidechaining multiband compression that I've been using on pretty much all the groups. If I solo the vocals and the bass, the vocals live pretty much in the 200 to about 3,000 range.
Something stopping you from taking these.
So we have a multiband dynamics that are routed to the vocals, and I've put in a range that represents where the vocals live. And you see that there's a couple of dB. You see that there's a couple of dB of reduction happening in the track, well, on the bass in this frequency, allowing the vocals to breathe. And I've kind of applied that technique across all my buses, across all my groups.
Something stopping you from taking these. It's the only thing that sets you free. Another way to run.
The interesting thing is that it's very minimal reduction, but across all the groups, it makes just that difference to be able to have the vocals sitting more comfortably in the track. So yeah, that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I could get to do future ones for other releases coming up. See you guys next time.